Beautiful, huh? Well, did anybody hear about or see the slap heard round the world last Sunday at the Academy Awards? Well, in case you didn't, Chris Rock got Hitch slapped. For those of you who may have seen the movie Hitch with Will Smith. That's right. So for those of you who don't know, during the Academy Awards, Chris Rock made a joke about the movie G.I. Jane from 25 years ago, in which Demi Moore shaved her head, and he made the joke involving Will Smith's wife, Jada, and her hairstyle. And Will Smith got up, went up to the stage, and slapped Chris Rock. Went back, sat down, shouted, "Leave my wife's expletive deletive name out of your mouth," twice. Now, we're not here to judge Will Smith. We're here to use what happened as an example that we can learn and grow from. That's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about how we can learn from what happened to grow spiritually ourselves. When we judge somebody, we're talking about their nature. We're saying somebody is there's something wrong with them as a person. We're defining how we think they are, you know. We use all kinds of words. He's selfish, or she's arrogant, or what, you know, we label a person. And so when we do that, we're not judging righteous judgment. We are judging by appearances. We're not acknowledging the spiritual nature of a person. We're judging them. We're judging their motives. And heaven knows, most people don't even know their own motives, let alone guessing properly other people's motives. So anyway, we're going to look at how can we grow spiritually by looking at, analyzing a little bit what happened and what happens in our own lives. The first thing is to recognize the difference between being triggered. Recognize the difference between a trigger and a cause for how we feel. Chris Rock did not cause Will Smith to get angry and to get up and slap him, right? Chris Rock made a joke. Now, we won't go into how sensitive was the joke. Did he not know about her condition and so on and so forth? He said some things, and Will's response or reaction was not caused by what Chris Rock said. It was triggered by it. And there's a difference. Chris Rock's words triggered a thought process in Will. And it may have triggered, and probably did, emotions that were buried in in Will Smith. That happens to all of us, if we're honest, right? It happens to all of us. What causes the anger is our thoughts about what happens. It's not what happens around us or to us, it's what happens inside of us, right? It's our thoughts about what happened. And usually what triggers and causes anger are judgmental thoughts. If we observe ourselves, we will see that when we get angry, it's often because what we're telling ourselves about what happened. You know, Will looked at his wife and she didn't look happy, and then he got triggered. What were the thoughts that were going on inside of him that made him angry. You see what we're saying? We're not saying Chris Rock made him angry. We're saying Will's thoughts about what was said were making him angry. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can look and ask ourselves, what am I thinking about right now? What am I telling myself? How am I thinking that's causing me to feel angry? Or that's causing me to feel jealous? Or that's causing me to feel anxious or fearful? Make sense? What do you think? Those of you online, put down in the chats, what do you think Will Smith could have been saying to himself that triggered his anger in that moment? What do you think he might have been angry? Now, again, we don't know. See, being judgmental, I think, is saying, I know what he was thinking, blah, 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 blah. We don't know. But what might be some thoughts that could have made him angry? We don't maybe even need to go there, but just for fun, you might want to put some down. Because it's how we think that triggers our anger. And this is one of the reasons I think Jesus said, judge not, lest you be judged. Judge not. Why? Because when you judge, it makes you feel something other than your true nature as a spiritual being. When we judge, it makes us feel angry. When we have other thoughts that are unlike our spiritual essence, it doesn't feel good inside. And sometimes people laugh when they make ugly comments. You ever notice that? People say something ugly, and ha ha ha. Why? Because they're trying to cover up the feeling. They know that's not the way to think. That's not the way to behave. Now, the other thing, you can just tell yourself, I'm feeling angry because I'm telling myself, fill in the blank. You know? Fill in the blank. Next is to recognize that external events can trigger repressed emotions. Repressed emotion. Trying to read my note here I wrote in here. Yes, we carry around repressed stuff. Ever since we were children, you know, you're a little child, you're totally dependent on your caretakers, whoever they were, and sometimes things didn't go the way we wanted them to go. You know, we want that Tonka truck or Tonka toy, whatever it is, or whatever, and we get upset and we don't know how to handle it. Maybe we cried and nobody showed up, so we felt scared and what have you. This stuff goes on throughout our lifetime. And if we never learn how to observe those feelings and observe those thoughts and so on, then we stuff it. It gets stuck in the body. It gets stuck in our consciousness. And then what happens? When something happens in the external world that reminds us on some level of that hurt, that pain of the past, it comes up. It comes up. You know, a person was in a relationship that had a real rough breakup, and they used to drive a car with that person in it when you went out on a date or whatever, and then years later, guy got married, has a family, and he's driving down the street and there's a car just like the one that he used to have when he dated so-and-so, and now all of a sudden that hurt, that anger comes up. You ever have something like that happen to you? Something outside triggers. It happens all the time. And people, instead of healing themselves of that stuff by observing it, by letting it flow through us, by not being attached to it, they try to avoid situations that will trigger that stuff inside of them, or they go out and they try to change the world around them so that it matches how they want it to be inside of themselves, you see. Instead of going directly and dealing with the stuff inside, they try to change people and they change things. So Will Smith was trying to change the source of what he in that moment felt was his pain. You know, something, I'm guessing, that Chris said, that joke Jada's look on her face and so on, triggered something inside of him that was repressed, perhaps, maybe. And that can happen to all of us. And here's the challenge, is that the challenge for us and for him, as he recognizes, credit to Will, he recognized that's not the way I want to behave, that's not the kind of person I want to be, that was inappropriate, that was not the right thing to do. He acknowledged all of that. And so what could he have done differently? And what can we do? And I would say to be the witness, to try to be in that place where we observe what comes through us rather than getting lost in it. You see, that pain, and he said it was just when he made the joke about Jada, it was too much for me to bear. Well, that's not really true, is it? In that moment, it was too much for him to bear. But his potential, our potential, you and my potential, is that we can be in the witness state, the observer state. And when things get said or when things happen, we can notice, oh boy, that I am feeling some real anger right now. I am feeling deeply hurt. I'm feeling anger right now. I want to get up and smack the mess out of that guy. This is to observe yourself, right? That's to be in the witness observer state. Looking at Jada and going, oh man, I feel so hurt looking at her hurt face right now. How dare him say what he said about her? Observing all that stuff going on inside of us, whatever it is. And that's hard. That's challenging. But it's possible. And it's spiritual growth. It's spiritual growth. All the other things can be helpful. Meditation can help us learn how to be the observer. Meditation can help us to tune into that state of calmness inside of us. We can do all kinds of other things, but bottom line is, how are we responding in the moment to what's happening around us and what's happening to us? Because that is spiritual growth. And again, we're not judging Will Smith. Thank you, Will Smith. Thank you, Chris Rock. Thank you for giving us an example that we can apply in our own lives of how we can grow. You know what? That's the thing. Everybody can be an example for us, can't they? People when they behave wonderfully and when they don't behave wonderfully. We can learn from all of it. We can learn from all of it. And hey, he's a human being, so are we. I think some of that repressed emotion might have gotten touched, those hurts and pains from the past, and it just came over like a volcano, right? You ever had emotions come over you like a volcano? The problem is we can be the observer, but if we're not the observer, what happens? We get lost in it. We become the anger. We become the jealousy. We become the anxiety. Now we're it. Will Smith was the anger in that moment. He wasn't Will Smith. He was that anger. We walk around like an inner trash compactor. You know how like a trash compactor, you put trash in there and you start to compact it down? We have feelings and we go, oh no, that's uncomfortable. We compact that trash. And what happens if you keep compacting trash and never empty out the trash? It starts to smell. It starts to leak. And leak it did. When I went to Virginia recently to do a funeral down there and to visit my brother and my sister and nephew and so on. And my brother told me, we got to talking about something. He said, just the other day outside a restaurant here in Norfolk, two guys got into a fight over a literal spilled drink. They got into an argument and started to shoot. And two people, bystanders, got killed. and 3 people were injured. Now, do you think that situation was about the spilled drink? No, 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 no. No. Do you think it could have something to do with stuff that they were carrying around inside of them in that moment? Yeah. And if it's true, that principle that like attracts like, that your consciousness is vibrating at, I'll use a little bit of more woo-woo language. Your consciousness is vibrating at a certain frequency, and you're putting out that energy, that frequency, and so you're attracting like frequency back to you. And so here you have 2 hurt and angry individuals attracted to sit down next to each other at the same time, and then to trigger each other's inner stuff, inner compacted trash going on inside of them that erupted into a volcano. That doesn't have to happen. That doesn't have to happen if we can be the observer. And we can step back and acknowledge, yes, I'm feeling this stuff just, coming out of me. Maybe you can't verbalize it that way, but you can take a deep breath. Oh, I'd like to get up there right now. I know that's not me. You're just watching it. You're observing your mind. You're observing your story. You're observing what's really going on inside of you. Not trying to change it. You're not trying to make yourself be different. You're just trying to watch it and see it and observe it and not act on it. Not act on it. That's spiritual growth. That's being in the witness state. Now, when Will Smith was, when he had time to relax, when he had time to think about it, when he had time to cool down, then the consciousness that he was emerged. I'm so sorry about this. I'm embarrassed by this. I'm ashamed by this. The Will Smith that most people love because of he's just plain likable, and he's been in a lot of great movies. When he's back to himself, that's not who he is, right? That's how we are. We are consciousness. We are spiritual beings. Jesus said, if someone slaps you on one side of your cheek, turn to him and let him slap the other. Oh my goodness. What is he saying? He's saying the part that gets slapped, that's your humanness that wants to strike out because of something somebody said or something that happens. What Jesus is saying is not to be a doormat. He's saying turn from that ego self. Turn from that part of you that wants to resist. Turn from that stuff that's coming up inside of you and turn to your higher nature, which means stay in that witness state. Stay in that observer state. And respond from there. Respond from that place. Because when we do that, now we're going to respond not from our lower self. See, science has shown that when you are angry, we become stupid. Our part of our brain, the primitive part of our brain, the fight and flight and freeze takes over. And that's what happened. It takes over. We don't think well when we're in that state. We don't make good decisions when we're in that state. People ruin their lives when they act out of those responses. People hurt other people when they act out of that part of their brain. People lose jobs because they react out of that place inside of them. And so it's important to recognize that, no, don't act out of that. Don't react out of that feeling. Stay seated. Stay in that place where you're the observer and you're feeling and you're noticing your thoughts. Take some deep breaths. Take some deep breaths. That's not just an old tail, stupid thing to do. The Olympic athletes use the breathing to control their emotions in their mind. Top performers use their breath to calm themselves down. That is a spiritual thing to do. You're centering yourself. That is spiritual growth. And you know who did that pretty well was Chris Rock. Chris Rock stayed pretty centered, didn't he? If you watched the video, if you read about it, he was very professional. Now let's acknowledge that stand-up comedians get a lot of practice at keeping in that place because they have hecklers, they have drunk people who are in the audiences, they have all kinds of things that they've got to deal with. And I'm sure Chris Rock has had a lot of experience dealing with hecklers and dealing with stuff going on in the room around him. So he was very well trained in being able to be professional under such a trying situation. And guess what? We admire that, don't we? We admire people who can respond rather than react. We admire when people are at least trying to do that. Maybe they're not doing it successfully, but we can tell that they're trying to do it. And I know sometimes some of my stuff that goes back to the past that I've been sort of observing for years is sometimes when a service person or anybody, almost anybody, I can tell they're not really listening. You ever tried to describe a problem to someone and their job is to help you solve the problem, but they're not really listening? They just have their pat solution they want to give you, and they don't really care what you have to say. It seems that way. And that's a judgment if you make that judgment in the moment. And sometimes that just triggers my annoyance. Because why? I grew up with a parent who rarely listened to what I had to say. And that stuff is still there at times, and it rears its head. And so it's a practice to just observe myself when it comes up. And sometimes it'll come through my voice as some annoyance or whatever. And sometimes, just actually the other day, I was talking to someone and she did not know what she was doing with this product I was asking her about, and I talked to people who knew the product, and I could hear the annoyance a little bit coming through my voice. And at one point I said, I apologize if I was a little too direct with you on this subject. So that happens, right? That happens. But if you're unconscious, you're not even aware of that. You just do it. You just let it fly out, and you don't even know you're doing it. But when you're aware of it, now it can be better. You can apologize. Will Smith apologized. And so the key is to try to be in that witness state. And if you've read anything about what happened, Chris Rock is being greeted with standing ovations in his concerts. His tickets went from $40-some to $740 a ticket. He's filling concert halls now. We admire people when they take charge of or mastery of themselves. That's spiritual growth, really. We don't know how he was later on in the afternoon, but so that's what I think we're here to do. We're here to, one, recognize that the cause of how we feel is not the external. That's the trigger. The cause is how we think about it. The cause is not the external. The cause is stuff we're carrying around with us that we've never allowed to flow through us. That's waiting to be healed inside of us. You see, that's the thing. Will Smith's reaction, I don't think, was really about what Chris Rock had to say. It really wasn't about his wife's reaction. I'm guessing it was stuff buried from the past, and those things simply triggered it. And that was an opportunity for him to actually heal that, which he didn't do. Maybe he'll get some healing from it now. But that was an opportunity for him to just observe it, to just let it flow through him. Just watch his thoughts, watch his feelings, take some deep breaths, and then respond to what was happening. Can you imagine if he were able to do that in that moment? Can you imagine what it would be like for you and me to do that when stuff comes up? That's what the important point is when stuff comes up, it's an opportunity that the universe has created just for us. Just for us. In that moment, we're given the opportunity to choose our response. And it may have taken a whole lot to get there. Can you think of all that took place in order for that moment to happen for Will Smith and Chris Rock and Jada? I mean, all of the stuff that he had to win an Academy, he had to... Anyway, you get the point, right? So we can choose how we're going to respond. And we can, instead of reacting, instead of behaving and getting lost in those emotions, we could instead lift the moment. Lift the moment. What could have happened? He could have looked at Jada, felt that hurt, taken a deep breath, noticed the angry thoughts starting to surface, noticed what he was telling himself, notice the desire to get up, and just watch it and take some deep breaths. He could have just relaxed his body, gritted his teeth a little bit, counted to 10, and who knows, when he got still, he might have looked at Jada and given her a compassionate smile and taken her hand and said, "Honey, I love you. You are so beautiful to me. You are so beautiful to me." And then sat back and just let the whole thing go. And you know what? The media probably would have caught that moment. And that would have been in the news. Look how self-mastery he had. Look at how much love he had for his, I'm sure that's what he would like to do. And I'm sure that's what he's going to work on from now on, to try to have that kind of growth and mastery in his life. Because he said so. He said, it's going to take effort. It's going to take effort for me to grow, but I'm going to do the work. So let me address just a couple other questions that might have come up, has come up for people. And that is, one, when is violence appropriate or warranted? There are people who he was protecting his wife and blah, 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 blah. Was he protecting his wife? I want to hear your comment, those of you online. Was he protecting his wife? Was slapping somebody warranted in that situation? I don't think so. Because as you know, Will Smith won an Academy for playing King Richard.
No. He played Venus's and Serena's father.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Wasn't his name Richard?
It was Richard, but Denzel Washington was the one that played.
Right. You're thinking of a different movie, yeah. But the movie was called King Richard, right? Wasn't it called King Richard? Now I'm getting confused. Yeah, it was called King Richard. So Will Smith won an Academy for playing King Richard, the father of Serena and Venus. Yeah. And so they asked Richard Williams, "What do you think about what happened?" And he said, "Violence. We don't condone violence unless it's in self-defense." So when it comes to physical harm, that's what he means by self-defense. right? Now, Gandhi, there are people who say violence is never warranted. Well, Gandhi believed violence was never warranted. There's a teaching in the yogic teachings, ahimsa, nonviolence. And he helped free India from British rule through nonviolent response. Through nonviolence, the British were touched at a deep level, and they decided to give up trying to rule India. Now, Gandhi has been criticized, saying that worked with the English because of who they are. That wouldn't have worked with the Nazis. Interesting point. So here's what I think. I think that that was unnecessary. Jada could determine her own feelings. She's can be the master of her own mind and heart. And he didn't need to do anything like that to defend her emotionally. That's never necessary. They were not threatened by physical harm. And that's the difference. I think, as in the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu scriptures, makes the point where Arjuna was fighting against his own family. It's about two families that were fighting each other. And Arjuna had hesitation about fighting his own relatives. And his charioteer, played by Krishna, which is like our Jesus in the Bible, told him, it's your duty to fight. You can't kill their spirit. And that's the difference. I personally feel, too, that if you're defending your life or you're defending the life of someone else, then it's okay to utilize violence, if necessary, in self-defense or defense of another person. But you're not doing it because you hate the person. You're not doing it because you think they're a terrible individual. You acknowledge they're a spiritual being. You're just defending yourself. Look at the Ukrainians. Do you think if they took the attitude, I behold the Christ in you, and they did nothing violent, that Putin would go, okay, I'm touched. We're not going to invade the Ukraine now. You think that would happen? It might, actually. Gandhi felt like if you behold the Christ in people, eventually their hearts are going to get touched. And, who knows? If they took that approach, you never know. Maybe the Russian people would start laying down their arms and Putin would get chased out of the country. Well, you don't know. But I think that I'd rather not take that chance if I were a Ukrainian right now. I think that self-defense is warranted in this situation. So that's my answer to that. The other question that comes up is, and plus, I'm interested in what your thoughts are. We're going to have a little gathering following the service for 15 minutes to hear your thoughts on this message and what transpired. See what you think. Also, what should the Academy do about Will Smith's behavior? That's an interesting question, isn't it? Because Will Smith is a celebrity. Will Smith is a famous person. Will Smith influences what younger people think. And I don't know about you, but I think how he behaves is very important. When you're in the spotlight, that's part of your responsibility, is to be a good example, not a bad example. And so I think that if nothing is done, that might give the message that it's okay to accost a comedian or a politician or a teacher or a minister or a president or whoever the heck else it is, that we get upset because they said something that hurt our feelings, that made us scared, that made us feel angry. Remember, when nobody makes us feel anything, we make ourselves feel it by the stuff we're carrying around and by the way we think about it. So I think something needs to be done in order to demonstrate this is unacceptable behavior. I don't care who you are. So we'll see. He definitely has said, I accept whatever you guys decide. He resigned from the Academy as a member, and good for him. That was smart. And anyway, that's my 2 cents on the matter. But the bottom line is, we're not here to judge. We're not here to judge. We acknowledge each is a spiritual being. We acknowledge that It's an example for how we can learn. We can learn every single day by watching what's going on around us. And we can learn every single moment by watching what's going on inside of us. That's what's so fabulous. You don't have to be in a room by yourself to grow spiritually. You don't have to swing a crystal around and have a pyramid hanging over your bed or whatever. By the way, I have crystals, so I'm not judging. But the key is every moment can be an opportunity to grow. Every moment can be an opportunity to grow in love. So we send Will Smith, love and light. We send Chris Rock, love and light. We send the Academy, love and light. We send the whole world love and light. And we seek to grow from every experience in our life. Now, this quote has been flying around the internet, I understand, and it goes like this. It's easy to judge. It's more difficult to understand. Understanding requires compassion, patience, and a willingness to believe that good hearts sometimes choose poor methods. Through judging, we separate. Through understanding, we grow. That's from Do Zantamata. Let's get still. And we acknowledge, Father, Mother God, your presence and activity expressing in and through each one of us. And we know that as an expression of your presence, we have the ability to respond rather than react. That we have the ability to be the observer, to be the witness. It's not easy, but we can do it. And we can start with the little things. We can start with the weather. It's raining outside. Or whatever it is. How am I going to respond to that? What is my response? How do I want to respond? We can start with the small things so that when the big things come, we'll be better prepared. So thank you, Spirit, for guiding and directing us. Helping us to be the person that we are as spiritual beings. And so it is. Amen. I want to thank our musicians today, Eddie Watkins Jr. and Denise Rosier. And I invite you to stay on for a discussion of the slap right after the service. You can put your thoughts and your questions in the comments section. All right? And we'll do about 15 minutes following the service. Please join me in affirming the prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Yea, God. Amen. Thank you for joining us today. Those of you here in the space and those of you online, thank you for joining us today. And may you have a joyful, peaceful, prosperous moment each and every day throughout the day and week. God bless you. Namaste.